This might be hard to hear, but your high school English teacher was right.
I knew it.
Revising your first draft is very important.
Yes, that is very important. Very important.
There are so many classic films out there that were almost terrible. Han Solo was originally going to be a weird green alien instead of Harrison Ford. Birdman was going to feature a Jack Sparrow cameo. Not to mention E.T.'s original horrific design. Disney might be pretty solid, but some of their first drafts have been nuts. Sometimes the heroes were originally villains.
No, it's fine. I'm not that princess.
There's a dark twist, or it was supposed to be a completely different movie. So let's dive into some of the craziest ways a Disney movie almost ended. It's probably impossible at this point to go to any department store in America and not find a giant section for Disney's Frozen. The behemoth animated franchise has enchanted both children and adults alike in a way that Disney movies haven't since the 1990s. So it's pretty crazy to think that we almost had an entirely different film. The first draft had nothing to do with a pair of sisters reuniting and accepting one another. In fact, Anna and Elsa weren't supposed to be sisters at all. The original story would have cast Elsa as an evil snow queen with an army of ice monsters. The film would have ended with a typical Disney action sequence where Anna goes up against the evil queen and her monsters.
Wait, what?
The process for this version of the film was well underway, so what changed it? The answer is simple: let it go. Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez were tasked with creating an epic villain song. They succeeded at humanizing the evil queen so much that the entire film had to be rewritten. It is kind of sad that we'll never get to see the original Frozen movie, though.
I knew there was something dubious going on here.
The story of a heartbroken evil queen who's changed by an innocent young princess sounded really great. We'll just have to accept that we'll never get to see it. Or we could just watch Maleficent, which is exactly that. Real smooth there, Disney. Finding Nemo is one of Pixar's most emotionally charged movies. The story of a young widower who has to chase after his kidnapped son was pretty heartbreaking. Partly because it sounds like an episode of Law & Order SVU, but with fish, you know. Pixar decided to follow that up with a sequel about a kid with amnesia who loses her parents and can't get home. The folks at Pixar clearly have issues that only therapists or multi-million-dollar animated films can actually solve.
Now we can solve both our problems.
It's hard to believe that the original plot of Finding Dory was even more depressing than what we got. Instead of a daring escape from the wildlife park that we saw Dory and all her friends freed from, several were going to get left behind. Then the filmmakers behind the movie saw a little documentary called Blackfish. This movie painted a very disturbing picture of how sea life is treated in captivity. The people at Pixar were moved so much by the documentary that they made sure to give their movie a happier ending. And that just goes to show that there is actually a line Pixar won't cross. Here we are, thinking that the folks that made the first 10 minutes of Up didn't have those.
I'm not gonna cry.
Toy Story and Toy Story 2 are famous for being two of the most heartwarming children's movies of all time. Then there's Toy Story 3, which is famous for basically being the Notebook of children's movies. If you didn't come out of the theater crying like a toddler who just found out Christmas was canceled, then you basically aren't human. It may not seem possible, but Toy Story 3 was almost even more depressing. The original plot for the movie was about everyone's favorite spaceman toy, Buzz Lightyear, getting recalled. Woody and the gang would have then had to cause a minor diplomatic incident by coming to his rescue. This meant that we could have certainly had to come to terms with the possibility of Buzz suffering the fate of all recalled toys. Which, if you don't know, they tend to get destroyed. Even if they managed to save our Buzz, several others would have been ground into shreds. Then there would be a happy ending where our Buzz is returned to Andy with a potentially toxic amount of lead. That version makes the horrifying dump scene from Toy Story 3 as disturbing as a Randy Newman song about friendship.
This isn't goodbye.
You might remember that the ending of The Little Mermaid was the most epic sea showdown until Jack Sparrow took on a kraken. It featured Prince Eric driving his ship into the giant Ursula, impaling her like she was a pilot in a Joss Whedon TV show. We kid. The original ending was much weaker. It featured Prince Eric on a teeny little boat with only a small harpoon to protect himself. In this one, Ursula wasn't giant, but she was just as formidable. She wrapped her tentacles around Eric and tried to drown him. Sebastian managed to get the trident to Eric just in time. He threw it into her chest with a ridiculous amount of accuracy and saved the day. This seemed a little too dark for a really cute Disney princess movie. Also, do you really need to choke someone and hold them underwater? That's just a redundant supervillain tactic, Ursula. The scene also made Eric look like a bad sailor. If we learned anything from battling sea monsters in movies, it's that you always need a bigger boat. Too bad Eric didn't have a scuba tank that he could put into Ursula's mouth and shoot. That seems to be the most efficient way to dispatch a sea creature, assuming that Jaws is accurate. Once upon a time, the Disney Corporation was just famous for making Disney movies. That seems so strange when they now own Marvel, Star Wars, 20th Century Fox, and Planet Earth once negotiations are done. Oh no. One of the only Marvel movies to make a reference to its Disney ownership was Age of Ultron. The titular robot baddie briefly sings the song from Pinocchio once he obtains sentience.
I had strings, but now I'm free.
While the sequel to the Avengers isn't one of the MCU's best, it did set up a lot of great movies to come. It almost set up one more, too. The final scene of the movie features Captain America and Black Widow auditioning new members of the team. Falcon, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and War Machine are the ones included in the scene, but there almost were two more. At one time, Quicksilver was going to miraculously survive the scene where he was basically Willem Dafoe in Platoon. Joss Whedon axed this idea because it was pretty ridiculous. Until your Agents of S.H.I.E.L.'s Phil Coulson, that is. The other surprising Avenger was going to be none other than Captain Marvel. She was going to drop into the team seemingly out of nowhere. This was going to be a pretty crazy choice. If Carol Danvers was already Captain Marvel, wouldn't they have called her in for the big Ultron showdown? As powerful as she is, Sokovia might still be a place. Too bad they didn't have her little space pager back then. Before we get to our video's end, let's pause for a second to thank two of our favorite video contributors. That's right, we're talking about the underloved duo of like and subscribe. They faithfully appear in every YouTube video, but so few people give them the attention they deserve. So, we encourage you to take a second and click both of them today, and thanks to their loyal service. Also, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you won't miss a single one of their videos. Thank you for your time! And now, let's get back to it. Rogue One is one of the best Star Wars movies of the Disney era. It drops the kiddie stuff in favor of a full-blown war epic. That really culminated in the tragic ending where all of our heroes lost their lives on Scarif. It's the darkest ending in the series. The people behind the movie thought that an ending that dark would be a little much for a Star Wars film for kids. Clearly, they never watched the Clone Wars, so they considered a version where several characters survived to rebel for another day. To think, we almost got spin-offs that would have featured Jyn Erso and the gang trying to get the plans for the Death Star too. Those Imperials just love building Death Stars. Honestly, they probably are massive job creators. You gotta build up the economy somehow. Well, we'll just have to settle for that Cassian Andor Disney Plus prequel series. While it will be nice to see the Rebellion's meanest spy and his droid buddy again, it won't be the same without the rest of the gang. It also presumably won't have Baby Yoda, which means that it's stealing resources from more Baby Yoda. It's probably safe to speak for the entire internet by this point to say to Disney that all we want is more Baby Yoda! Prepare yourselves because you're about to realize that a massive part of your childhood was almost something completely different. Are you ready? Good, because Woody was almost the evil villain of Toy Story, and life will never be the same now that we know it. While that thought is pretty disturbing, it's not as crazy as you might think. Really go back and consider the plot of Toy Story. Remove all the Randy Newman songs, the charming animation, and Tom Hanks' soothing voice that just makes you feel like everything's okay. He's like if warm soup on a rainy day was a person.
This is great! Oh! I'm saved!
When you strip down the film, you realize that Woody's kind of a jerk. He gets insanely jealous of Buzz and then throws him out a window. While that sort of thing is easily forgiven in Toyland, for us, that usually gets you some serious jail time.
Oh, what? These are plastic.
Modern Disney classics like Frozen, Tangled, and Wreck-It Ralph have really overshadowed poor Moana. Those that have seen it, though, know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Moana is the greatest Disney princess ever.
The ocean chose me!
She's a take-charge young woman who saves the ocean through courage, compassion, and ingenuity. It's really hard to be more heroic than The Rock, even in animated form, but she manages.
Or not my hero.
What's crazy is that she wasn't always meant to be the hero. In an earlier version of the story, Maui was actually going to save the day instead of Moana. Luckily, they came to their senses and gave her the ending she truly deserved. Now we just need Disney to give us that Moana sequel that we all want. We've already gotten Frozen 2 and Wreck-It Ralph 2. It's time to pony up, Disney. Certainly the ocean could get in some sort of trouble that would require the services of Moana and Maui again. Maybe they could leave Hey Hey behind this time. He's a fun sidekick, but he's no Olaf. Treasure Planet is one of those movies that is so great that it's shocking people aren't always talking about it. It's got space pirates. It's just the coolest thing ever. Space pirates. Yet somehow, millions of people are capable of having conversations that aren't about Treasure Planet. Weird, right? The movie ends with Jim becoming a military cadet on his way to have hundreds of space adventures. This is much more exciting than the original ending. It would have featured young Jim going home to rebuild the inn on his way to have hundreds of adventures. Running an inn. That's how you were going to end a space epic? It wasn't even like a cool sci-fi inn. It was just a boring bed and breakfast with those weird scratchy towels and Wi-Fi that you have to pay extra for. It's really hard to make a good ending to a giant epic franchise that pleases everybody. Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's why it's so impressive that Marvel managed to blow everyone's mind with Avengers Endgame. The movie not only resolved the cliffhanger at the end of Infinity War, but it also managed to cap off the entire Infinity Saga. The ultimate showdown with Thanos featured practically every hero in the MCU. Thanos still proved to be a worthy opponent despite all of that. The entire thing came down to the wire as Iron Man pulled the stones out of the gauntlet right as he was about to snap again. Seriously, Thanos, you can't go around traumatizing people like that every year. Not cool, bro. Tony snapped the army away, but it cost him his life. As sad as it was when Tony Stark gave his life to save the universe, it was almost even sadder. The original version of the scene had Tony's vision of meeting his adult daughter. The scene was even shot with 13 Reasons Why actress Katherine Langford as Morgan Stark. It ultimately got cut because it threw off the rhythm and detracted from the reactions of everyone involved. Ultimately, it's good that we got the new ending. There's only so many grown man tears that an IMAX theater can handle. The showings would have had to come with ponchos and maybe even life jackets. That's just too much, what with you already wearing the 3D glasses while balancing a big old bucket of popcorn. Yeah, they made the right call. And there you have it, all the best alternate endings to Disney movies out there. Which one was the most shocking? Evil Woody, right? Well, let us know in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more from The Binger.